Hello and welcome to the Battle Room. My name is Colin, and today I want to break down the tournament that occurred last weekend under Victory Road. So for those who do not know, Victory Road is a pretty premier tournament organizer in the community, and they ran the first ever Series 12 tournament that had over 500 viewers. So today we're going to break it down, and we're going to cover it in some different segments, and we'll see what trends are arising, what important things we need to know from the tournament, what we can learn, and how we can improve as players. So first things first, let's talk about usage stats. The two Pokemon that stood the most out to me were Incineroar and Zacian. Incineroar obviously is a known staple of GS Cup, but we saw 64% of teams using Incineroar, which is kind of an astronomical number, and then we saw 57% Zacians. Now, I think this is really interesting. First off, Incineroar shouldn't be too surprising, but what was kind of surprising was the top cut percentage. In top cut, 85% of the teams we saw there, of the 40 some teams, had Incineroar. So basically what that's telling me right now in the early meta is that if you want to top cut the tournament, you better be running Incineroar. Incineroar's usage stats are astronomical, and its cut percentage is insane. I've never seen such insane numbers. But, you know, it's Incineroar. We all know it's the best Pokemon, but I think the Zacian stats are more concerning and something to take note of. The Zacian stats basically say that 60% of teams had Zacian, which is kind of incredible because Incineroar, now that makes sense to me because it is a non-restricted supportive Pokemon, which are very, very important in GS Cup metas. But Zacian is a restricted, which means you can only have 2 of those on a team. So a lot of players are choosing to bring Zacian over other restricteds, and its usage is rising astronomically. Zacian stats are slightly concerning. It is clearly the best legendary in the format, not the best Pokemon. That's still our buddy Incineroar, but the best legend and a mon that's we're gonna see basically the entire season. Currently we're seeing a lot of play rough Zacians, which to help combat stuff like Yveltal, Palkia, the other restricteds. Play rough is seeing a lot of use, and we're not seeing too much substitute yet, but we are seeing some players opt to drop substitute for Sacred Sword. Some players will keep play rough. It is more important at the moment, but I think these trends are slightly concerning for our casual fans, especially haters of Incineroar. But I think it's something to keep an eye on. I predicted before the format started that I expected Incineroar to be at about 70% and Zacian at 60%, so my prediction is almost correct from this first tournament, but it does give us a lot of insight into these two Pokemon. Next up, let's talk about the most used duo, Zacian plus Kyogre. Now, in GS Cup, you're allowed to use 2 restricteds, and I think we found our most dominant pair early meta. Things can obviously change, it's very early on, but it's going to be Zacian and Kyogre. Not a real surprise. Zacian, as I mentioned earlier, has insane usage, is a very, very strong Pokemon right now, and Kyogre is also doing incredibly well. It's a great max candidate. It also functions as a non-max candidate. It's just very, very flexible. It covers the weaknesses of Zacian. If you're looking to build your own Series 12 teams, this is looking like the place to start. 24% usage stats among all players of the tournament. Again, about 550 some. So this is a lot of players using this combo, which is really surprising because the next combo is at 10%. So nearly double the percentage there from Kyogre Zacian players. The second one being Zacian plus Yveltal, and then the third one being Zacian and Palkia. So Zacian obviously on all the top 3 right there, and then just with 3 different restricteds. I think that Zacian Kyogre from the get-go just seemed like a very strong core, and it's making a lot of sense that we're seeing it here. Kind of surprising that we're seeing 23%. I think that's a little bit high, but I think it will go down a little bit as we go on. Palkia did end up winning the tournament, spoiler alert, but I do think that Zacian Kyogre will continue to be one of the stronger cores throughout the entire format. They just give you so much flexibility and durability. A lot of the times it does open up more maxes as well, because Kyogre is not the greatest max, but it does function as a pretty strong one if need be, and then Zacian obviously can't max, so it really enables the other teammates, and one of those teammates is the Seismitoad. So let's break down Seismitoad real quick here. So Seismitoad is a rather interesting Pokemon. It's a Pokemon we really haven't seen performing all too well in the history of Sword and Shield, or just in Pokemon history in general. We did see it top cut one of the tournaments before COVID happened, but we're seeing it shine right now in the restricted format, and you're probably wondering why. I'm here to answer that. So in this tournament, 5 Seismitoads top cut, which is pretty weird considering a lot of players wouldn't have expected Seismitoad to do so well. It did top cut one of the tournaments prior, but I think this is where Seismitoad is really going to start to shine, and I think it's a great partner for Kyogre. We just mentioned Kyogre, and Seismitoad is its bread and butter. Seismitoad has access to Bounce, which is super, super duper important. Its moveset is fantastic. It gets Liquidation, Stomping Tantrum, Power Whip, and Bounce. You're traditionally going to see all four, but obviously Protect can be opted into. You can run several items such as Life Orb, Assault Vest, whatever you really need for your team. But basically, Seismitoad's job is to power up Kyogre with potential bounces, Airstream. Airstream and Kyogre go hand in hand. And then it has a ton of coverage, Max Quake to hit Zacian to give special defense boost. And then you can even restart the Rain, which is really, really important in Groudon matchups. Obviously, it's very weak to like Venusaur and stuff, but if you restart the Rain, Seismitoad is just going and popping off. So I think we're going to see a lot of more Seismitoad. I think it's here to stay. I don't think it's the greatest Pokemon of all time, but it does have a really cool niche. It also gets access to Power Up, so it's combating Kyogre pretty strongly. It's setting up Max Quakes, it's resetting the Rain. It's just doing a ton for Kyogre teams, and Seismitoad had a little bit of a performance here. Note that it did not make it past top 16. All of the Seismitoads did lose before top 8, but Seismitoad either way, 5 Seismitoads in cut is pretty incredible, and it's really interesting. Especially moving forward, it is a very interesting Pokemon to look at. But let's talk about another Pokemon that I really thought was pretty good, but I did not expect it to come out in full force. Let's talk about Zapdos. So Zapdos was something that I thought was very, very strong, but not a Pokemon I expected to emerge so dominantly in this tournament. I think Zapdos and Thundurus are two very interesting Pokemon, and a discussion to be had which one is better. Thundurus obviously is the physical end, with it being usually traditionally running like Assault Vest, and it will run stuff like Wild Charge, Fly, usually Superpower, Brick Break, whatever utility, and then maybe Protect or Lash Out. But Thundurus is traditionally physical with Defiant, and we saw a lot of Thunduruses. Thundurus had about 13 in the top cut, and 120 overall, 22%-ish of the tournament ran Thundurus, and then the top cut had a solid 31%. So Thundurus was doing pretty well for itself. But Zapdos surprised me, because Zapdos is the special version of Thundurus, if you will. It's a little bit slower, but it usually runs the moveset of Hurricane, Thunderbolt. It can run Heat Wave, it can run Roost. Kind of Weather Ball is another popular move as well. So it kind of can run a similar-ish moves. It's obviously running that flying and electric coverage. But Zapdos did really well in the tournament with a 29% cut, 12 Zapdoses in top cut, and Thundurus had 13. So they were dominating. Obviously, if you add those two together, we're getting about 60% usage stats from the electric flying types here. So a lot of teams are opting to run electric types. Electric types seems to be very popular. Max Airstream is super important in this format, and we're just seeing a lot of Zapdos and a lot of Thundurus. And I think Zapdos is a mon that is really, really strong. It's obviously a little slower than Thundurus, so Thundurus can get the jump if it is to start Airstreaming first. But Zapdos has that really good synergy with Kyogre, and we actually saw a lot of Kyogre Zapdos teams. Kyogre Zapdos Zacian with no Tailwinder was actually quite popular, and I expected a lot of Tailwind. So Zapdos really, really popping off in this tour, and a mon I really didn't fully expect to do as well. I thought I tested it out, it felt pretty good, but I did not expect it to be as dominant as it was, performing really, really well in cut. Its highest placing was obviously second, but it still did very, very well in this tournament, which kind of surprised me, because I didn't know if Zapdos was going to pick up as much steam as it was going to, and it just clearly is a very, very strong Pokemon with Kyogre, and I think Zapdos is a mon you're going to have to watch out for. I think the Kyogre teams are slowly consolidating into a Zapdos, Kyogre, Zacian, Incineroar core traditionally as the 4 Pokemon, and it just did incredible throughout the tournament. And I'm really happy for Zapdos. I'm a big Zapdos guy, and I'm very happy with Zapdos' results here. But I thought it was pretty interesting, because I think Zapdos is a mon that not a lot of people were like super, like I didn't think it was super broken, but it did really, really well in the tournament. Now let's talk about Elekki. Ooh, buddy, Zapdos did well, but Elekki's stocks have fallen. So going into this format, Elekki was seen to be one of the strongest forms of speed control and one of the strongest Pokemon in the game. But in this tournament, it did not show up as much as it would like to have. Elekki, there was 145 of them, about 30%, but only 17% in cut. Elekki did perform rather lackluster in my opinion. I don't think this is the end of Elekki by all means. I still think it's really incredibly strong, but it's interesting to look at this underperformance here, or maybe it's more interesting to look at what's really, really popular, because I think all ground types were super important in this format. We've talked about Seismitoad. I think Gastron is definitely a sleeper mon, and we saw a good chunk of them in cut. And we also saw a lot of Groudon as well. So I think ground types are just really, really important and really stacking up in teams. And it looks like a lot of the other electric types just kind of shined much better at this current moment. I'm not saying Elekki's trash, but it's really interesting to note how poorly Elekki did compared to Zapdos and Thundurus. Because I think Zapdos and Thundurus are actually a little weak to Elekki sometimes. But Elekki can bounce too, it can run physical. So it's interesting to see how weak it performed and how great Zapdos and Thundurus performed. I think Elekki will have a swing back, and I think we'll see more of it in the future. Obviously, its usage stat was still pretty high, but I don't think it performed as well as it nearly could have. But obviously, Elekki will be back. Now, let's talk about another underperforming Pokemon, and that of Calorix Ice. So going into this, Calorix Ice plus Kyogre was a very popular restricted duo, and something that I think a lot of players expected a lot from. We saw Calorix perform pretty well in the online tours leading up to it, and it is, it's been doing somewhat okay. But in this tournament, it got absolutely gutted. I think Calorix plus Kyogre, Calorix in general, is just pretty strong Pokemon, but is very one-dimensional, and I wasn't sure how long it would last. But here at this tournament, it got absolutely destroyed. Not a single one was in the top cut. I looked over this list like 4 times, and I was not able to find a single Calorix, which had me slightly concerned, but it is about to be expected. It is very obvious what they're trying to do. I think it's a very concrete and strong strategy. Generally, you're going to see Calorix plus Mimikyu plus Incineroar and Kyogre as the main core 4, usually an electric type in the back. But the main idea is to set up Trick Room and try to sweep with Calorix. We've seen a lot of weakness policy sets, and I found it very interesting that not a single one cut, because I do think this Pokemon is pretty good, but a little one-dimensional, and that was my concerns for it. It's something that you can prep for in practice because there's not too much versatility in what the team can do. So I think it's a mon that's very one-dimensional, and I think it got really punished in this tournament. I do expect Calorix to continue to be used and continue to climb, and I think people will top cut with it. I don't think it's a doomed Pokemon by any means. I still think it's very good. But I do think it's very clear and very obvious that a lot of the other restricteds are doing much better. Even Calorix Shadow was able to find a top cut, several honestly, where Calorix Ice was not able to find any. I think Shadow has a lot of pressure on it lately due to Pokemon like Yveltal, but I think we'll still continue to see both rise in terms of usage and in terms of success. But right now, Calorix Ice is looking poor. I would invest elsewhere if I were you. But there is a Pokemon who's on the rise, and that is Palkia. Let's talk about Palkia. Everybody's favorite Sinnoh god is here, the space-time god themselves, and we have seen Palkia win its first tournament of Series 12. Very exciting for Palkia fans everywhere, but also very interesting for us competitive players, because Palkia has performed really well in the past of Series 12. It's been performing okay throughout the year as we've been playing a lot of restricted formats, but I think Palkia has truly hit a stride of its own. With the proper speed control and the proper coverage, it can be a true menace on the battlefield. We see it usually paired with Zacian. That seems to be like the most top tier Palkia pairing. It did win the tournament as well, with a team consisting of Palkia, Grimmsnarl, Incineroar, Amoonguss, Thundurus, and Zacian. So that's the team that did win. Pretty crazy stuff. I think Palkia is a really good Pokemon, and I think a big part about piloting Palkia is about positioning it well. It's a great max. It does well versus Kyogre. With the proper speed control, it's doing well versus Zacian, and I think Palkia is just a great Pokemon. We didn't see Trick Room on Palkia, which a lot of Palkias ran prior to this, but this is again just a Palkia-centric team. Grimmsnarl is an obvious great partner to it, and Palkia just performed really well. I think Palkia, in my opinion, if you've checked out my tier list, I think Palkia is definitely still like a B tier Pokemon. It doesn't mean it's like moves automatically to S, but I do think that it is performing really well. And as long as you pair a lot of these restricteds with one of the really strong restricteds, such as Zacian or Yveltal, you usually can make them work and find a lot of success. And Palkia here just working insanely well with Zacian. And it took the dub, which was really impressive to me, and obviously piloted incredibly well. Able to get that dub, and yeah, Palkia is looking really good. And I think a lot of the teams that I've noticed throughout the tournament were really focused on being very standard, with a lot of options to be played well, with a little bit of spice thrown in. I think the ideal way to build in this format is to take something really standard, really strong, such as Kyogre Zacian, Palkia, and just use the most obvious strong choices, but adding a little bit of spice here and there. We saw it with Paul Ruiz, with Ferrothorn as one of the additions to his team. We see it with the Palkia team. It's a very standard team, but with a slightly different take on what's good with Palkia. And I think that's the main way you want to build it. You don't want to get too creative. You don't want to be whipping out your Pachirisus here. If you find a cool move that you can tack onto your team to beat something that's frustrating you, such as Calorix, such as Palkia, Kyogre, so be it. You find a cool move, you find a cool Pokemon that can work for you, and I think it will take you a long, long way in this format. And yeah, it's pretty crazy to see Palkia do so well, but it makes a lot of sense when we look at the Champions team and what they were able to do. So now let's send it to our boys on the field to take a look at these teams and how they were running them. Let's check out that top cut. Thank you very much, Colin. Now let's check out these teams down here on the field. So here's the obvious Palkia champion team that we've discussed a lot about. Again, it's pretty standard stuff, but it looks really, really potent and really, really strong. Just lets the player be the player and be able to outplay your opponent as much as possible. The runner-up was Ralph Dude, with a team consisting of Kyogre and the Zapdos I mentioned earlier, but with Tailwind. A lot of the Kyogre teams did not have Tailwind, but we're going to see Tailwind here. Notably in third, we have a Solgaleo, which I think Solgaleo is pretty strong, pretty cool Pokemon. But it did catch me off guard a little bit, Solgaleo doing as well as it did. It was a very cool set built around puffing up that Kyogre. Lots of max candidates there. And then we see North with a team that they built with Jones as a starter, which is a really, really good team. I thought it was a really cool take on Groudon plus Sun teams, because we're seeing a lot of Venusaur, and I had spoken with Jones about the team a little bit in my stream the other day, and they mentioned how good they think Charizard is compared to Venusaur. So a little bit of Venusaur shade being thrown there, but obviously, again, they placed top 4th with the team. It looks really, really good. I think Charizard is a really, really cool Pokemon. I think damage over time is still very, very strong. We're obviously only seeing one dot Pokemon in the top 4, but we're also seeing a lot of them in that top 8 there. The next two teams are very, very similar. Zacian plus Sun, but we're seeing Groudon on one side, and then we're seeing Yveltal on the other, and we're seeing a little bit of difference. We've got Manual Sun with Groudon, and the other team doesn't actually have Sun, it just has a Venusaur. I stand corrected. And then after that one, we see a Yveltal team from Maddie there. It looks like a super fun team. I know apparently Maddie is 16 years old, and this was their first tour, so huge congrats to them. I think it's so awesome to see them pilot Lapras as well, because I think Lapras has kind of been thrown to the wayside, but clearly it performed really well here, so Lapras is a mon that apparently is interesting to watch. Because I really didn't think Lapras would be very good, but it clearly popped the hell off here. And then below that, we have finally Mike D'Angelo, obviously a really consistent, solid player with a Tailwind plus Zapdos team as well, with Kyogre and Zacian. So Kyogre and Zacian doing really, really well, and we see so many Zacians in that top 8. Even in that 9th place, you see there is another Zacian. And I think Zacian, as we mentioned earlier, is clearly one of the best Pokemon in the game. And I thought I would just break down a little bit of the top 8 teams there, just kind of look at them with you, and yeah, again, if you want to see all this information, it is in the doc from Evan Smoke, so if you want to check it out, it is in the link description, so you can see all this for yourself and click on these PokePaste and see all the information of all the teams. Let's send it back to Colin, and I'll see you guys later. Thank you very much for the boys in the field, but let's close it out here. The final closing thoughts I have here are that this tournament went as about expected. We're seeing a lot of Vincent, a lot of Kyogre, a lot of Zacian, but it's making a lot of sense so far, and I'm very excited to see how this format can go. If you like this style of tournament updates, let me know. I had a lot of fun making it, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, thank you so much for Victory Road for running these tours. Thank you so much to Evan Smoke VGC. Without Evan, we wouldn't have had any of this information. It was incredible. He made an amazing Google Doc that I'll link down below. That has all the teams, all the stats. Shout outs to him, because it just made this so much easier to make. And huge shout outs to Evan. Twitter down below, doc down below if you want to look at this information for yourself. And maybe you'll find something I didn't. But I just wanted to do a quick breakdown of this tournament. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a great and amazing day. I'll see you guys next time on the Battle Room VGC channel. See you later.